Welcome to another episode of our Capital Ideas podcast. Today I'm joined by Sugi Widjaja. He's an analyst at Capital Group where he spent the past 14 years. Sugi brings a global perspective to tech investing, spending about half his time traveling the world to meet companies. In this episode, we'll hear about China and how it's leading in some ways people might not know, Sugi's views on AI's growing role in advertising, coding, and the future of work. It's going to be an exciting episode. Sugi, welcome.
Thank you, Mike, for having me.
So Sugi, it is very, very rare, I can say never, that I've been able to start one of these podcasts with a picture. And the picture is of you and I and Chuck Mistakos, one of our distribution folks based in Seattle, with a police officer. Oh, this one is, Chuck's not in this one. So for those who are listening and not watching, I'm going to ask Sugi to describe the photo behind us, but it was the first time you and I had spent time together 9 years ago, and it involved the police. Can you explain this, please?
That's right. So, the two of us, we were on this marketing trip and Chuck was driving us around.
Crazy driver.
Yeah. Crazy driver. And then the police pulled us over. And I believe it was because he had an expired license plate and he forgot to put his new stick on his license plate. But the police was a good fun, and he took a picture of us.
They were not allowed to show his face, so there's a big smiley face, but he was also smiling in the photo, just so you know, the police officer. But that was good fun. It was a good way for you and I to get to know each other back almost a decade ago. I want to continue in the spirit of difficult events and talk about you in one of your first jobs. And you were laid off from one of your first jobs in IT consulting when the TMT, technology, media, telecom bubble burst.
Correct.
Like many people around the world. Tell us a little about that experience and how it led you towards Capital Group.
Well, very interesting, Mike. I think that was back in year 2001. And I was doing IT consulting. I was not on a project, and the IT bubble, TMT bubble burst. So I was laid off. And I think that experience led me to know that I need to be cognizant of the environment around me, particularly when there's changes in the macro tech disruption. So because of that, even when I do a lot of the investing these days, I always ask myself what are potential risks and disruption that can happen with my investments.
And your second job after that was at a film company?
It was at a film company, yes.
What was your role? Were you on film? Were you a star?
So I was a research analyst for the film company. So one of the research report I wrote was, as digital cameras penetration grows and increase, there's a risk that consumers would not be able to print as much, and there will be a big impact to our cash cow. Unfortunately, that research report never made it through to the headquarters.
Yeah.
And I left to go to business school.
Well, that was their Kodak moment, effectively.
Correct.
So you went to business school and you found your way here. And one of the early things you did at Capital Group and are still known for today is regarding Nintendo. And you talked to them about their existence as primarily a console manufacturer.
Yep.
And tried to talk to them about maybe a different business model going forward. Share that with us.
Yeah, so I was looking at the video game industry at that time, but I have industry friends in the VCs and the game community all telling me that Nintendo has very powerful IP. So which is why I decided to go and visit the company. And what I realized at that time was the company share price was about a 10,000 yen. The balance sheet has 8,000 yen in cash. And I value the properties that they have in Kyoto, Tokyo, Seattle.
The physical property.
Yeah. And they also have ownership of Seattle Mariners. And at the time I was like, wow, you're getting the whole company for free. And when I look at the business model, they were still a very traditional console manufacturers. Right. And I took a class in business school, and one of the case studies that we looked at was Disney, the turnaround of Disney under Michael Eisner. So having studied that, I realized that there's a lot of potential for Nintendo to leverage its IPs in the same way that Disney did. So I went to visit the management. I bought the HBS case studies, Harvard Business School case studies for the CEOs. I bought the Michael Eisner autobiography for him, and I explained how they could do different areas using the IPs in such ways such as the amusement theme parks, movies, mobile games, merchandising.
Right.
And that was back in year 2012. So it's great to see that in the last 13 years, they have executed on a lot of those strategies.
Well, that's a fundamental shift for the company. I mean, going from really a video game manufacturer, a console manufacturer, to utilizing its IP and being much, much more is a dramatic shift. Did they have the talent, the leadership talent to execute on that as quickly as they needed? Did it take 2 years or 5 to 10 years to execute that strategy?
Mike, I think that's a very good point you made. And that's where it plays into capital strength as a long-term investor. So when I first made investments, it was probably in 2012. And to your point, it took them at least 2 years to get the right management team in place, hire the right people,
Right.
change out the management teams that's necessary to bring them to the next era. So it did take a couple years before they can execute.
All right. Well, that brings us to our office treasure hunt, Sugi, because in our office treasure hunt, and I'm going to ask you to explain it, but what do I have in my hands that is now going into your hands?
So this is a traditional Nintendo playing cards. I think for people who know, Nintendo started off as a playing card company. So this is one of the presents that they sent me as a long-term shareholder and investor in Nintendo.
It's great, and I love that you have it on your desk. So let's get to the tech space, Sugi. What opportunities are you seeing out there?
So Mike, let's take a step back and then let's revisit the TMT bubble and then the mobile internet era. So if you look at those two different cycles, we initially saw the pickup of infrastructure spend. So Cisco at one point became the largest market cap company in the world. And then once those infrastructure has been built, whether it's the broadband or on the mobile side, we started to see the next layer of products, whether it's services like e-commerce, social media, or a software application. So I think right now the opportunities is to look at the next layer, which is we have been building a lot of this AI infrastructure and the large language model. I think that the next layer of opportunities in terms of the services, software that will be coming out of this AI investment will be very interesting.
And is that a multi-decade theme? Is that going to take another 3 to 5 years to play out from now? How do you think of timing regarding that?
I do think this is probably a multi-year thing. And we are already seeing some signs of companies that are benefiting from the AI. So some examples would be social media companies that are able to use AI to drive engagement. So time spent for users are increasing on the platforms, which then created more ad inventory. They're also using AI to have better ad targeting, increasing the return on ad spend for advertisers. Hence, advertisers are spending more advertising dollars on the platforms. And then that created increased revenue. And the beautiful things about social media companies is a lot of the incremental revenue drop to the bottom line, which is why you start to see earnings grow for some of these social companies. I've also seen some companies using AI to reduce costs dramatically. So that is also another major trend and theme that I'm focusing on.
And when you spend time with CEOs and CFOs of companies that you own, you spend a lot of time quizzing them on their AI strategy. Is that, 5 years ago, that was probably not at all part of the conversation. Today, it's probably 30 or 40% of the conversation. Give us some context of how important that conversation is with those senior leaders as it relates to their strategy.
I think it's absolutely important because we're in a paradigm shift. I think AI, when I talk to management teams, I do want to understand how they think about the impact to their business. I think there's two particular big impact. One on the revenue side.
Right.
How is AI going to drive more incremental revenue for your business? And we've seen examples which I've given, social medias and so forth. And then the second impact is on the cost side. I think there are most of the companies I talk to right now, between 30 to 50% of the codes are now being written by AI coding agents. And that would create a lot of efficiency in terms of the cost side. So on even the back office side, we've seen companies using AI to operate it more efficiently.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of interesting potential impact that we could see over the next several years.
You know, what's interesting on the coding side, and I love your view on it, is I've heard that from most folks that it's around 30% of code that can now be written by AI, and it's going up, not down. And then I asked folks, well, what percentage fewer coders do you have? And the answer is never 30 to 50%. It's a lot lower. When does that catch up?
I think, Mike, we're starting to see signs of that. Again, just from recent conversations I've had with many companies. To your point, maybe they would not see fewer headcounts immediately, but they are not adding headcounts to the coders. And they have most companies have a natural attrition of between 8 to 10%.
Right.
So naturally, over the next several years, if they're not adding headcount, they're going to have 20 to 30% less coders in the organization.
So it might not be this big splash of we've reduced headcount by X. It may just happen through attrition over time.
Yeah, and I think particularly what is interesting, Mike, is particularly for countries where traditionally it's been harder to do restructuring. So countries where Korea, Japan, France, where traditionally it is very hard for a corporate to do restructuring. I think AI is now able to help them reduce the headcount and improve corporate profits.
You're really a smart mind when it comes to Asia tech investing. And when you talk to people about it, what do you think surprises them most about the tech landscape in Asia? What is it? Is it the EV industry? Is it the adoption of AI? Is it corporate governance being fundamentally different today than it was 20 years ago? What in the tech landscape in Asia is most surprising to people, do you think?
I would say China remains misunderstood by many people. And the reason why I say that is perhaps a lot of people still think of China tech companies as copycats. And that might be true 20 years ago, where companies would look at the US tech and develop similar products and services in the local region. But my observation during the mobile internet era is we have seen some of these China tech companies actually, in fact, be more innovative on things such as food delivery, on things such as mobile payments, on super apps. And I've seen that consistently happens, and that still remains misunderstood. The second thing, Mike, is I do think that a lot of people might have underestimated the ability for Chinese companies to go from 1 to 10,000 and scale things up very rapidly while bringing the cost of production and cost of operation down significantly. I have looked at the alternative energy industry in the past. And this is probably 15, 18 years ago, where at that time there was a lot of the European, Japanese companies in the solar and the wind space. And particularly in the solar space, I think the lowest cost producer today is in China. And you mentioned another recent case study and example, which is the EV sectors, the electric vehicle sectors. Right. I would say that if you were to go to China today, you'll be surprised and blown away at how great some of these Chinese EV cars are. And some of them cost under 20,000 US dollars. And the bill of material and the cost to make them is far more cheaper than what one can imagine. So I think some of those things are still misunderstood and it still surprise people.
I think that would surprise people. I mean, I think the voiceover people use is they're copying, as you said. And when did that transition happen to when they're leading? Because that's a big transition for 1.3 billion folks. China as a country now leading in technology. What is that, 5 or 10 years ago? When did you first have that aha moment that says something's very different here?
I would say maybe 2013, and that's when mobile internet in China started to pick up. And one of the reasons why perhaps they started to lead, I would say, in the mobile internet services or mobile internet era would be when they have so much more people and the population size is so much greater. So a lot of these services on the scale that they have, right? I mean, for example, food delivery average daily order volume-wise, it's probably in the 100 plus million a day. So the tech stack that's needed to
Scale.
support that. And it's just incredible. And even you talk about mobile payments, I think in China, it's 100% cashless. It's very hard to go around China using cash. So in the infrastructure that's needed to support those type of transaction volume is just unprecedented.
Yeah, so that's when, the question comes up, is China investable today with all the geopolitical issues out there? And the answer is yes, but what sector and what companies is the real question, not whether or not there's opportunity or China has an opportunity to lead in some areas.
Correct.
In Hong Kong, I know you've been known to do one of these dinners once a year where you bring together people. Tell us about the nature of the dinner and maybe share a few members of the guest list that you invite with us.
So it started about 15 years ago, and it first started off with maybe 10, 15 people, and now it's grown to about 100 people. So I would invite tech executives from across the tech ecosystem. So that would include the venture capitals, the seed investors, that would also include prominent startups, and that would also include executives from the public companies. So the whole idea and genesis is I would also invite guest speakers to talk about certain topics which relates to key emerging trends that we're all interested in. So that I could invite professors, leading researcher in a certain area. And the whole idea is to get everyone together to discuss and to learn from one another about key leading trends, tech trends. And what I've also observed, and Mike, is a lot of these companies, particularly public companies, we're all trying to figure things out together. So in terms of the leading next trend, next technologies, no one has a perfect answer to it. So the more we can do to have this type of discussion on the future of technology landscape, I think it is very helpful for my guests and for our colleagues too.
So it's networking, it's brainstorming, it's all of those kinds of things. Do you have good wine there, Sugi?
Unfortunately, because of the budget, no.
Okay, all right. I don't mind hearing that part of it as well. Let's. And by the way, I've heard it's an incredibly interesting dinner, so I give you credit for launching that and growing it. I think that's super interesting. Let's talk about your investment edge. What would you say is unique? Because we do ask all of our investment professionals who come on, portfolio managers, analysts, they're all investors. We ask them what their edge is. What's yours?
Two things, Mike. On the first point is I always ask myself, what do I know that the market doesn't? And for me, the predicting the potential future earnings and cash flow of the company is very critical. So what I do is I actually do meet a lot of companies. I travel more than half the time around the world, meeting companies, not just companies I cover. I meet companies that are maybe in my coverage, but in a different geography, understanding different business model, changes in the environment, changes in technology. And if I see some of those changes, I will make an investment. I'll give you a few examples. For example, this is back in 2011, 2012. I first met the leading Korean instant messaging company, KakaoTalk, when they only had 12 people. And that was through an introduction from a venture capital friend of mine.
12 people worked at the company.
At the time, it was 12 people. Now it's in tens of billions market cap. So a venture capital friend of mine told me that, oh, this is a very interesting company, Sugi. You need to meet them. Met them. There were only 10 people. And I realized that the mobile instant messaging app on smartphone will be a very powerful super app. And as I observed the company over the next year, I noticed how they've grown in user base and they started to monetize. And that actually gave me conviction in investing in Tencent because they had the leading mobile instant messenger in Japan, and Naver, which has the leading mobile instant messaging in Japan. So that kind of edge gave me conviction of the future potential earnings.
Tencent in China.
Tencent in China and Line in Japan.
Right.
So that gave me conviction that I have an edge in terms of understanding the business model better.
So it's the read-through from the smaller company and what it was able to do that helped you gain conviction in the larger companies that you were able to invest in.
Absolutely. And another example, Mike, is understanding changes in business model. My own observation when I was covering the game industry was for PC game, most of the traditional business model was subscription-based. Every month you have to pay a subscription fee. China was the first country, and Shanda Interactive was the first company that shifted the business model from monthly subscription to free to play. And that was back in 2005. And when I saw that change, revenue did go down for a few quarters. And then subsequently, the revenue went up above beyond what they were making. The free-to-play model transition is very powerful for earnings. So with that understanding of business model, whenever I see some of those shifts happen, again, it gave me conviction that the future earnings and free cash flow of this company is much higher than what the market is understanding. So I think that's where my investment edge is, just understanding different business model, talking to venture capital, understanding the startup community. And then secondly is obviously using time on my side, because I might be early. I was early on Tencent for maybe up to a year.
You were early on Nintendo.
Yes.
Both, yeah.
And but I think at Capital, we were able to use time as our advantage to make that long-term investments for our clients.
It's interesting you say time, because sometimes people say at 3 trillion of assets at Capital Group, is it hard to maneuver those assets? And when you have time on your side, you can build that Nintendo or Tencent position much earlier than other folks. And you have the time to not only be right, but to also accumulate enough size of a position to impact portfolios. That's a good advantage for our clients as well. And it is, you talked about the model. It is counterintuitive to say, I'm going to get rid of my monthly subscription fee and ultimately grow quicker than I would have grown. It's counterintuitive in many ways, but it works. And that was a 20-year-old example that you use. That's
correct.
It's really interesting.
Well, I mean, I'll give you another example. If I met ByteDance in 2016, 2017, at that time, they had their short-form video platform in China. And they started to monetize in China from online advertising. And there was still a private company. I have friends in the VC community who make an introduction. And when I saw them monetizing the online ad platform, and I've done a lot of channel checks with advertisers, I realized how powerful that platform is in terms of higher ROAS, return on ad spend for advertisers, and they could take market share away from other media platforms in China. So as a result, I sold out of a lot of these online media ad companies in China. Subsequently, most of them was just looking at the share price. They were down between 60 to 70%.
Something dramatically changed.
Correct. So those insights in startups really helped me a lot.
Is that, as we transition to lessons learned, are those some of the lessons learned, or are there other lessons that you'd share that make you a better investor today from a mistake you had made in the past?
I think they are very important lessons. I think some of the important lessons that I've learned is not to overly trust management.
Right.
Because the management many times might not be that close to the ground and the situation, and they would not understand the industry dynamic as well. So I've met management that thought that they were winning in a certain space. And I was surprised because just a simple channel checks within the ecosystem would tell you that's not the case.
They didn't know the details.
They did not know the details. I think what I've observed in many organizations is, including myself at my film company, is no one wants to give the bad news to the senior leaders. So they always only hear the good news. And by the time they hear the bad news, it might be too late. And that's why it creates this innovator's dilemma situation.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you were born in Indonesia. You grew up in Singapore. You went to high school here in California.
That's right.
You went to Penn, and then you went to UC Berkeley. So that's a winding road, Sugi. Like that's a very windy road. How did that make you either the person you are or the investor you are today, that journey?
I would say changes. There's been a lot of changes in my life and adaptability. So I always tell the young people that I mentor that do not be afraid of changes, and the challenges that you take on would actually help improve you as a person and be better. And I have a lot of great, not just mentors, but people I owe in my life. And I would also attribute to my high school, college counselor.
And so that is your high school, college counselors gave you what advice? Said, reach for a different geography, go for a different, like, how did that influence you?
So both my parents did not graduate from high school. So all they wanted for me and my siblings are to get a college degree. And when I first came to the US, the path that they thought was for me to go to a 2 years community college and then a 4 years college. And my college counselor was the one who encouraged me to aim higher. And she told me that there's no downside to be ambitious.
I love that advice.
Which is why I decided to apply for a 4-year college.
Well, I mean, to have your parents have that experience and then for you to be ambitious like that and do what you've done, they must have been super proud to watch that journey. And you and your wife, Millie, you give back in terms of this entrepreneurship fellows program at UPenn. Can you describe it to us? What is that program? Why'd you launch it? What does it do?
Yeah, on why I launched it is it's inspired by many CG colleagues, because a lot of our CG associates have given back to the community. And I think it's great to always consistently think about how we can give back to the society. And I have observed that the entrepreneurship startups have changed the life of millions of people around the world, even in emerging market. So I'm trying to do things where I'm also very passionate about, which is entrepreneurship startups. And I truly believe that every college grads coming out should have an entrepreneurship mindset. So this is why I've decided to work with my undergrad to design a program for college kids to learn about entrepreneurship, how to do a startup. And during the summer, they would actually work in an internship with a startup companies. And when they come back after the internship, they will write a case study on that. So it's just to allow the young kids to have exposure to what is it like to do a startup? What is it like to start a business? I think that's very critical, particularly in this day and age.
So make it real for them.
That's right.
So if you are, this is you give me advice now, Sugi. So here we go. So if you are a 20-year-old junior at a university today and you want to become an investor like you, what would you tell them to do?
Few things. First, be intellectually curious about everything. And what I meant is when I wanted to do this job, I read all the books related to investing, the Buffett books, like just everything. But having done investing for the last 20 years, particularly for long-term investors, I would encourage the students to learn a variety of things. Because as I observe my own investment, there are a lot of things that are just not in the P&L. You can stare at the P&L, you can make some models, but assumptions going behind, you need to have the logic to understand why. And to understand the logic why, sometimes, Mike, you have to go back to the history of a country, particularly history of a company, and to understand different business model. I think history is a very interesting subject because what I do myself is I read a lot of case studies.
Right.
I read up a lot of companies, what they have done in the past, some of the amazing leaders that have come in to change the company. So those deep understanding of history, the political environment, and particularly I think one thing that I also would highlight to young people, human psychology. And the reason why I say that, back to the point on management and organization structure, there are a lot of times when I observe companies where they know that they need to change. There's certain things they need to do, but it comes back to maybe organization politics they're not able to do.
Change
it's just hard. So just to have those understanding for long-term investing, I think is very helpful.
You made me feel a lot better about my history degree. Thank you, Sugi. I appreciate that.
I did not know that.
That's all right. I appreciate it. Look, I'm going to give you this mug, Sugi, and it's our mug where we like to express gratitude for something. And we call it the Obsessively Grateful mug. And in society today, we can lack gratitude as a society, as individuals. So I like to share this with our guests. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
And I'm going to ask you what you're grateful for.
Oh, wow. Grateful for many things, but one of the moments that I was so grateful to the point that I shed a tear was when I got naturalized as a U.S. citizen.
What year was that?
That was back in 2008. And I have never imagined that someone like me, a new immigrant to the country, whose parents did not have high school degree, just with pure hard work can achieve what I have. And I'm very grateful to the country for providing me the resources, and a lot of people have been wonderful in my journey. So I'm very grateful for the country.
That's great. I'll also tell you, just hearing you speak and hearing how you think and how you triangulate all these different data points, some very specific to a company and others more tangential, but gives you insight. I'm grateful that you're here as an investor helping our clients because you're a differentiated thinker and you're helping our clients succeed. So thank you for the way you think and how you process and your commitment to helping our clients achieve their goals. It means a lot.
Thank you for having me, Mike. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. That's Sugi. And have a great day. We appreciate you joining us.